What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to continue with our off-season coverage in preparation for the 2025 fantasy football season. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you my quarterback rankings heading into your drafts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an Excel chart that I made that have all the quarterbacks ranked in terms of how I rank them, but I'm also going to compare them to the consensus fantasy football expert of how they are ranking quarterbacks, in what rounds these guys are projected to be drafted based on the mock drafts that have already happened so far among users. And then I will let you know, based on all that information, where you can find value among the quarterbacks, in my opinion, and what guys that you want to try to avoid who could be potential busts for you this season. Then finally, at the end, I'll talk a little bit of the Superflex League, some deep quarterbacks that I will be looking at. So if you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. I reply to all my commenters and love giving advice that can help you guys in your fantasy football season. So please take advantage of that with this small channel and ask any questions that you got. Also, if you're interested in other content as well, please check that out in the description below. All right, so you can see here is my Excel chart that I made that ranks all the quarterbacks. And what I did is I put together a comparison of how the consensus fantasy expert ranks them, the average round they're getting drafted, and I have highlighted cells here that determine where there are value and where there is not value. So first I'm going to orient you to these columns to let you know what I'm talking about here. So in the far left column, that is simply how I rank them in terms of what I like to have this quarterback on my team. And part of my philosophy is to try to go for guys with upside to some degree. So I have some dark, solid lines that have been made in order to delineate the tiers of quarterbacks that I will talk about as we go through the quarterbacks individually in their tiers. Then in the fifth column from the left under Kant's rank, that means consensus rank, and that is basically the consensus of how the fantasy football experts rank the quarterbacks. You have, that is an average of ESPN, Yahoo, CBS, Sleeper, and Real-Time Fantasy Sports. So basically what that is, and you can see these on the far right as well, these ones are also a comparison of, just them to each other. You can kind of see how Sleeper may depict somebody differently than ESPN. But the consensus of all that is listed under consensus rank. That is the average among all the experts. Then you have the average round, which is the average round that that player is getting drafted. So for example, we start with Josh Allen at the top. He is on average getting drafted as the third pick in the third round. The average is based out of a 10-team league, just for your reference. So that is where Josh Allen is on average getting drafted. But if you notice, Lamar Jackson is generally the first quarterback going off the board. Late in the second round, around pick 9 of the second round. So what the ADP comparison is if you're looking at the quarterbacks of where they're getting drafted, Lamar Jackson went number 1, so he is at the top of that column. So this is a comparison to basically determine where there are value if you were to re-rank all these quarterbacks at the end of the year. So the value in terms of how I've highlighted them is that if there is a difference of at least one, for example, Jalen Hurts is generally getting drafted around later than the projected number 2 quarterback is getting taken at that ADP. So Jalen Hurts, I have him ranked number 2, so he is listed as the ADP comparison of 3.3 because that is where Josh Allen is getting taken as the consensus second quarterback on the board. Because I have Jalen Hurts ranked as the second quarterback, I then deem that as value on this graph and highlight him in green because based on that calculation, you're getting in the fourth round a quarterback value that you could have gotten in the third round if it was a redraft. So that is essentially what I'm doing with this, and anything I have highlighted in green is what I have delineated as value. So I'll now go into talking about each of these quarterbacks individually and the tiers that I've created. And obviously, if you have any questions about this, there's a lot of numbers on this. So if you do have questions about it, don't hesitate to ask below, and I'm happy to help explain this further if I wasn't able to articulate that very well in this video. But basically, I have this set up in terms of tiers that are delineated by the dark solid lines. And my first tier, you could call it the S tier if you like the tier maker stuff, would be Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Jaden Daniels. The reason I have these four as the S tier quarterbacks is because one, they're going on average at the top of drafts, but I think that generally all four of them are great value for that ADP that you're getting. And the reason being is because they are all elite runners in addition to elite passers. You get an elite floor with them running the ball that you just simply don't get with a lot of these other quarterbacks. So those four are pretty much, for lack of better words, the Mount Rushmore of fantasy football quarterbacks in 2025, because all four of these guys give you elite value that you generally cannot get from the other quarterbacks. There are some outliers that could potentially move into that field, much like Jaden Daniels did last year. But these four have pretty much set themselves apart because of their versatility, both as an elite passer and an elite runner, and should be excellent in fantasy. I like Jalen Hurts the most because I think that in general he is getting taken fourth or fifth on average in some of these leagues. And in real-time fantasy sports, he's actually going fifth among the their consensus expert. But I do think that Jalen Hurts, just given the Eagles' infrastructure, I like him as the second best quarterback going into fantasy football this season. And because of that, I have him highlighted green because you can generally get him a little bit later than the other quarterbacks in his same tier, and I think will still give you very equivalent value. Obviously, if you have any of these four, that's excellent, and that's a great strategy to have. But if you're going to get these guys, you're going to cost yourself some key flex positions that may be more beneficial to you. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's really two lines of thought as you could try to get one of these top four guys and just lock in your QB1 that you can rely upon all year, or you could play the stream game. And there's some great streaming value that I'll touch on later in this graph as well. So my next tier I would put in the A tier. And these guys are, I think they will be great for fantasy this season, but they just don't give you the rushing upside that you would get from those guys in the S tier. And that would be Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, and Bo Nix. I still have Baker Mayfield this high despite what some of the experts have ranked him as, because he's returning a lot of his core from Tampa Bay, and he's getting some more weapons with Emeka Egbuka coming in as a first-round wide receiver from Ohio State. They also dealt with a lot of injuries last season, and despite that, Baker Mayfield was still an elite fantasy quarterback. So I like him to be in this A tier, and I think that he's going to be great value, especially as a guy that's on average getting drafted in the 7th round, but can give you comparison of a 6th-round pick. So he's not quite the full 1 point, so I didn't highlight him green. But a similar concept applies to Bo Nix. This is a guy that can give you some good rushing upside as well. But that Broncos offense has gotten better. They've included some more weapons on their team. And I think because of that, Bo Nix is in this A tier of quarterbacks that I would want in fantasy as well. So this is the next group. You can get them a little bit later. On average, you're getting them around the 4th to 8th round. Joe Burrow generally going a little bit higher than these other two. But I think that all three of these guys are excellent quarterbacks that you could have as well for fantasy. My next tier, you could call it a B tier if you want, but I want to categorize these guys as high upside, high bust potential plays. So this is Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, and Caleb Williams. And ranked in that order to me is the volatility that you're getting with these players. I think that all three of these guys could be elite fantasy football players this season and could really be in for a great season in which you're bordering on top 5 potential. But there are a lot of question marks with all three of these players that, to me, puts them in a category of their own that I can't really move them any higher, but I really can't put them any lower than that either. Kyler Murray, the book's kind of been out on him for a little while in that he is an excellent quarterback from time to time. There's games where he has the potential where he looks like a top 5 quarterback, and you combine that with his speed and his ability to be elusive and get the ball down the field. It's just, he puts together a really special highlight reel. But there's also games where he just completely falls on his face and is almost unplayable for fantasy. So Arizona, they've got weapons on their team this season. Maybe they could figure out a way to get him a little bit more in open space and running to try to boost up his floor value running the ball. I like him over these other two, but I just can't put him in that group with Bo Nix and higher based on some of the extreme of outcomes that we've seen with Kyler Murray through the years. Justin Fields is another one of the guys that is, he's an excellent talent with his rushing ability, but he has not really shown consistency as a, just floor general of the football field, for lack of better words, being able to read the field as a quarterback. So he goes to a situation in New York that I really like because he doesn't really have a ton of competition behind him. And assuming that he gets past this foot injury and there's no issues that lead him into missing part of the season, Justin Fields is a great asset because of his ability to run the ball. Perhaps Aaron Glenn and company can figure out a way to get him out in the open using his legs. And if he can be trusted to be the starting quarterback all season, I think there's definitely top 10 upside with Justin Fields. It also could very much go the other way, in which this may be Justin Fields' last starting job. So there's a lot of question marks with him. And then Caleb Williams, same thing. He's for as well as Jaden Daniels did last season, Caleb Williams was still taken ahead of him for a reason based on his pedigree in college. And Caleb Williams, now that he's got Ben Johnson as his coach, they've bolstered that offense even more than they had last season. This is a recipe for a huge breakout for Caleb Williams. And because of that, I would like to take the risk of that in the 9th round if able. The question mark, though, is that Caleb Williams has not really proven it in the NFL. He had a lot of opportunities last season and played pretty poorly at times. Although he did show some promise, I think he could give you some great value here in the 9th round, and I think he could borderline be a top 10 quarterback. I can't put him lower than even Jared Goff because I think that Caleb Williams can tap into potential that even Jared Goff doesn't necessarily show for fantasy. So because of that, these three are in a tier of their own. There's a lot of high risk involved with these three players, but I would honestly prefer to have one of these three guys than the guys in the next tier because they all generally I could see that list shuffling quite a bit, for lack of better words. And that's where we get to this next tier. And this is, to me, the solid streamer end of bench quarterbacks that I would have in single quarterback leagues and guys that would be starting quarterbacks in your Superflex leagues. So I'll go in order. Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love at 13. You have Patrick Mahomes, who I'll talk about in a sec, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Sam Darnold, and Geno Smith. And if you notice, a lot of these guys are highlighted because I think this starts to get to the point in which you have guys that are good value, which is highlighted green, and guys that are bad value for their draft position, which is highlighted in red. So I'll start first with Justin Herbert and Jordan Love at Jared Goff I talked about a little bit. He's generally going around the same range in drafts that I project him to be, so he doesn't have any highlighted color for him necessarily. Justin Herbert and Jordan Love, to me, though, are good value relative to where they're going. For example, Justin Herbert is on average going in the 12th round, but based on how I project his performance, that is 10th round quarterback selection performance, which means that Justin Herbert can give you some good value there. I do trust that even though they don't have a lot of on paper brand name weapons, that they will figure out a way to be effective, and he's just going to become more comfortable in Jim Harbaugh's system and have a much better fantasy performance. He was still the number 14 quarterback last year, despite some issues with the team's offense early on. Jordan Love, same thing, dealt with injuries last season. He's on average going in the 14th round this year, but I think can give you 11th round value because I have him ranked as the 13th quarterback. So because of that, I think that Jordan Love is, again, great value. I can't quite put him in I really thought about putting him up in that group with the Bo Nix or even the Kyler Murray, Justin Fields group. But I do think you get more consistency with Jordan Love on average than those guys. But my big question mark, though, is, who is the elite receiving option on this team? Because this Packers offense relied a lot on Josh Jacobs in short yardage situations, especially late in the season. I think that was where they were most effective on offense. And my question is Jordan Love more of a game managing quarterback, or is he more of a elite top end quarterback? So I can't quite put him higher than this, but I do think there is a real argument for him to be moved into those upper echelon tiers. We'll see how the season develops, though. Patrick Mahomes. So this is where I'm now starting to talk about bad value in the draft. He is on average going as the 5th quarterback taken. So if you look at this average round column, he is on average going in the 6th round. Now I have him ranked as my 14th quarterback, which means that if you are taking all the quarterbacks and you're selecting them end of the season based on how they rank, that Patrick Mahomes, in my projection, will actually give you the same value as a quarterback that you're taking in the 11th round. So why do I say this? Because Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs offense is not the same offense that they were with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in his prime. This has been true for years now. This is going back all the way to when Tyreek Hill was traded in 2022. Since then, he has been a pretty mediocre quarterback. In the 2023 and 2024 fantasy seasons, he was a huge bust. Now the argument for this season is, they're getting Rashee Rice back. Xavier Worthy is a year older. But they really have not upgraded this offense any more than that. You don't really see any guys that they've brought in that are elite game changers. The running back core is relatively the same. Travis Kelce is older. This Chiefs defense is really what runs this team. I see this again being a low-scoring formula where the Chiefs are winning games by a thread. They're winning ugly. And because of that, I can't put Patrick Mahomes in the top 10. I do not understand why he is going on average as the 5th quarterback off the board, or I guess 6th really. But to me, this is just, don't draft him. This is going to obviously set you up for failure, in my opinion. I would much rather have these other guys listed above him, Jordan Love, etc. And I honestly thought about putting CJ Stroud higher, but CJ Stroud also had a bad season last year. So I'd have to put Mahomes a little bit higher, but still, Patrick Mahomes is bad value in the fantasy drafts this season. I would be avoiding him. CJ Stroud, though, I think that is where you're getting pretty good value. A lot of people are scared off on his 2024 fantasy season, but in 2023, he was excellent. And probably what might have happened is Bobby Slowick, maybe he was in over his head and he, just was not able to adjust to new defensive schemes in his second year as the OC. And so now that Bobby Slowick is gone, they have Nick Caley in as OC. And he previously worked with the Patriots, with the Los Angeles Rams, and has been around some good offensive schemes with McVay, etc. During his time. So possibly what they could do is maybe incorporate some of those schemes that could potentially help CJ Stroud. I do think that there is possibility, just based on the potential and the upside of CJ Stroud, that he can be have a much better fantasy season. I can't really rank him above these other quarterbacks, though, in my opinion, but I think on average he is going very late in drafts, 14th round, but can give you value of a 12th round quarterback, in my opinion. So because of that, I have CJ Stroud highlighted in green. 2 quarterbacks are in red here. I have Brock Purdy at 16 and Dak Prescott at 17. And, we're now in the range where there are points in the season where both of these guys will be excellent streamers that I would want to start. But I think as a whole, I have a lot of question marks about these teams, about their receiving cores, and about the players that make me question them being any higher on this list. So we'll start with Brock Purdy. My biggest concerns with him is just the weapons around him. Brandon Ayuk is still recovering from his knee injuries. Juwan Jennings is in a holdout. Ricky Pearsall is dealing with injuries, etc. And beyond that, they really do not have very much else. Remember, they also lost Deebo Samuel to the Commanders earlier this season. So what is that going to look like for Brock Purdy? Because when he did not have all of his weapons, he had some pretty poor performances last season. So I I think relative to the range that he's going, there are some guys that I like better that are later, and I have them highlighted in red. Dak Prescott, a lot of Dak Prescott's value driving up is just driven up by Cowboy fans who are delusional. But in general, there's a lot of optimism in that they added George Pickens. Maybe they can get a better offensive scheme going. And the fact that I think this team is going to be losing a lot of games and they're going to be, throwing the ball quite a bit to try to catch back up. I don't think this will be a very good team this season. But all that being said, that happened a lot last season, and Dak Prescott still played very poorly, threw a lot of interceptions, and he's coming off a non-contact hamstring tear, which is not very common among quarterbacks, especially the mechanism in which he tore it. So all of this stuff really concerns me with Dak Prescott, and although I think he will be very good at times this season, I'm still ranking him 17th, and I think that he is poor value relative to his ADP, which is generally, I project his performance will be equivalent to a quarterback drafted 3 rounds later than where he's going right now. There are 2 excellent values that I really like, and that close out this tier of the solid starter quarterbacks that streaming for single quarterback leagues, but starter for super flex leagues. Sam Darnold and Geno Smith. I was honestly amazed. I had to double check this, the relative ADP of Sam Darnold. The consensus have him as the number 29 quarterback. And if you notice in CBS, they don't even have a ranking for him because a lot of people are concerned about the potential of Jalen Milroe coming in and running that team. Very similar to kind of what happened with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix last year. But this is a situation to me where I still feel like Sam Darnold is pretty clearly going to be the quarterback of this team. And unlike Kirk Cousins, Darnold was awesome last year. He was a top 10 quarterback. So yeah, he's going to a new scheme. He's going to a defensive coach. Maybe it won't click as well. But this is a guy that should not be drafted that late. And I think there is a world where he could be a top 12 quarterback again. I don't like him that high, but I think that his ADP by the consensus of being the 29th quarterback is pretty insane to me. He's on average going in the 17th round if you do even have a league that goes that late. So that means he may be undrafted in a lot of leagues. I do not understand this at all personally. I think that Sam Darnold will be a great quarterback this season. And I think that if you can get him undrafted, this is excellent value for you. Same thing with Geno Smith here. I think that people a lot of times they don't really give Geno Smith the credit that he deserves because of the fact that his story and how he was mostly a journeyman and then kind of broke out late in his career. But he was a great quarterback last season, not even beyond fantasy, but just as a quarterback. Really did a good job getting the ball down the field and running that offense. His big issue is turnovers and consistency, which definitely hurts him, and I think is part of the reason why I only have him at 19th. But still, as a guy that's consensus ranking is number 27, which is behind guys like Bryce Young, and right up there with Aaron Rodgers, who I think he's just totally cooked at this point. Geno Smith is now going to the Raiders, which have Brock Bowers. They have Ashton Genty. They still have Jacoby Myers, who is relevant. I think that they're going to figure out a way to make this offense hum and still be pretty effective. So I like Geno Smith as a guy that you can get undrafted pretty much, but still give you some starter quality performance week to week. So I like Geno Smith at the end of this range. I think that he is going to, and again, this is a team that I don't expect to really win a lot of games, but to still be competitive. And because of that, I think they're going to be throwing the ball quite often. So I like Geno Smith as a guy that you can get super late, and I think this is good value. He's my 19th quarterback. So the next group is a bunch of guys that I have kind of on the fringe of that super quarterback league of guys, super flex league, not super quarterback. Super flex leagues, guys that I like, but I still have a lot of question marks that I can't really put them any higher than that. I'm going to start with J.J. McCarthy. I do feel that there is a world where he can have a breakout season. I have a lot of question marks of if that will actually happen, though. And I think that, he is a guy that I could very well see having a breakout season, but I think his ADP is a little bit too high now that I can't quite put him there. I'm not going to highlight him in red because to me, I think it's still a lot of upside in drafting him. But I think that relative to his ADP going in the 13th round, I would much rather take a chance on Darnold than J.J. McCarthy personally. Because McCarthy, although he is, the Vikings ultimately chose him over Sam Darnold, essentially, he's still basically a rookie. And there's a lot of question marks of, can he be a starting NFL quarterback? I'm not going to really necessarily speculate on that. I think there's a reason why it was a first-round pick for a reason. But still, I just don't see him being any higher than 20th on my fantasy rankings. And he's getting a little bit too rich for me to want to take the chance on him. Tua is the next one. A lot of this is contingent on health. There is a world where, again, he could be much higher on this list. But I think given the health concerns, given the offensive scheme kind of stalling out a little bit last season relative to years past, kind of why I have him there. Drake May is another one, very much like J.J. McCarthy, that is going a little bit too rich for me to want to take a chance on him. I do think there's a world where he can break out, but you just look at the weapons on that team, and I mean, they're relying on Stephon Diggs, who is coming off an ACL tear in his 30s. And then beyond that, there's a lot of question marks about the pass catchers. So, yeah, I can't do that. I can't quite get there with Drake May right now. Matt Stafford, great quarterback, not a great fantasy quarterback, and I don't think even Devontae Adams changes that. And then I'd highlight these guys in blue here: Michael Penix Jr., Cam Ward, and Bryce Young. These are guys that I think I'm very interested in because of the upside that they could have, especially in super flex 2 quarterback leagues. I think that these guys are generally going undrafted, if not the late rounds, but I think are really intriguing to me as guys that I would like to take a chance on. The numbers don't back it up, so I don't highlight them in green or anything, but it just, my hunch is that I think there is a possibility that they have a good breakout season, and I highlight them in blue here as the deepest of options that I like. So Michael Penix Jr., we didn't really see a great sample size of him last season, but he did show command of the offense. He's older, much like the guys that were in that situation last year, Jade Daniels and Bo Nix. I see a world where Penix is going to be able to adjust to the NFL pretty quickly and be able to be effective on that team. My question is what can the coaching staff maximize his ability to be successful? He's got elite weapons, and I think he really can break out. And I like Michael Penix as the guy that I would want as my second quarterback that you can get late in those super flex leagues. Cam Ward, this is just off of his upside from his draft position. But Calvin Ridley is a good weapon. They also are bringing in Alec Eomanor, who could be a guy on his timeline that could step up as the wide receiver too. Gunnar Helm as the tight end. There's a way you could talk yourself into Cam Ward, and if he is, the number one pick in the draft, and if he could prove it right away, I think that he could definitely be in the top 20 or higher. And then Bryce Young, people sleep on him. He's another former number 1 overall pick who started off very poorly in his career, but the ownership situation is not great in Carolina. Dave Canales, I think, I could see a world where he does a lot of work with him this offseason and really things start to click with Bryce Young, and he has a very good fantasy season this year. You started to see that a little bit at the end of 2024, and he's obviously got a long way to go to be a consistent, reliable asset in fantasy. But Bryce Young, to me, is a deep sleeper that I really like. And then I have a few guys listed here below that are this just to conclude out the rankings. Aaron Rodgers, not good value for me. Generally not getting drafted, though. Trevor Lawrence I have highlighted in red, though, because he is somebody that he's going above these guys that I'm talking about. He's going in the 14th round, and yes, he has Liam Cohen, who just did wonders with Baker Mayfield. But I don't really know if I see it with Trevor Lawrence to be able to do that. He's let a lot of people down before. Again, another former 1 overall pick who's kind of struggled out the gate, but a little bit older than Bryce Young at this point. I don't know about Trevor Lawrence, man. I don't think I would want to take him. And then Anthony Richardson highlighted here at number 29. Very intriguing upside, but extremely volatile performances. He stays relevant in this picture, so he is the last guy on my board. But we don't even really know if he's on the starting unit to start the season. I've seen some rumors that Daniel Jones may even start. I don't know if I agree with that. I think this is Anthony Richardson's job to lose, essentially, but he gets injured a lot. He's also very inconsistent. He gives you some flashes of elite upside, but until he can start to put it together consistently, he's not going to be any higher than that on this list for me. All right, so that is my quarterback chart of how I rank all the quarterbacks for the season. Like I said earlier, if you have any questions about any of it or want to just ask any questions that you have about fantasy football for this upcoming draft, any content you'd like to see, let me know in the comment box. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions that you have. But if you want me to go into any more depth on any of these quarterbacks in particular, let me know that as well. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.